Hello, everybody. So, looks like we made it to the last day of class. Um, Gonna be kind of a short one as far as lecture goes today, because in a class like this, time to work on projects is probably more important. So we'll probably only go for like half an hour or so here. And then, yeah, and then work on projects, and I'll just be sitting by the computer until the normal end of class time, 3:45, ready to hop back on a Zoom call. I'll actually be in my office a little bit longer than that. I might leave the office for about 15 minutes because there's free ice cream up front. So I might go get a bowl of ice cream. But otherwise I'll be sitting at my desk ready to hop back on a Zoom call if anybody needs any help. But from what I've seen, things are moving along pretty well. It's just finding time to work on everything. Finished creating the discussion board for module 7, the one about publishing assets and games. And one thing I know I like to make, but I probably should have made before making that, just something I would recommend. Um, Gamers sometimes have very strong opinions, and they're more than happy to share them with you and keep sharing them and go way overboard sharing their opinions. So for things like selling games and stuff, I would kind of recommend doing it in your own name. Come up with this company name or a fake name to use or something, just because yeah, sometimes gamers will go way overboard with complaints, and it's best if they don't have alternative ways to track you down or anything. That's just something I found over the years. Um, Something to watch out for. Um, Otherwise, I'm about finished grading the pool simulations. I think I'm about halfway through now. It, uh, it's hard to find time the last week of the semester. It's a very busy time of year about. And I know I'm ready for a break, so I'm sure you all are too. Uh, just want to make a couple quick notes. One is we've been looking at the Godot engine this semester, but the big thing of that is just it's got an easier learning curve to get started with. There's a lot of templates and things built in. 2D and 3D are handled exactly the same, so it fits in tight time constraints better. But it's not the only game engine. So but what we've been looking at should be transferable skills to other game engines. I'm just going to pull up some images of them. So like 5 screen editor screenshots. So that's Unreal 5 is probably the big one people think of. They have different game engines have different focus right now. The big thing with Unreal 5 is that it's the shaders and how good things can be made to look. The drawback on it is you need a very, very powerful gaming computer just to make a game with it. And it only makes games for very, very powerful computers. You can't, I guess you can make small games on it, but it's not, there's a lot of extra work for making something small. And most games that you make on it are going to need a very powerful machine to run. But where's, maybe this one will work. That's probably blurry. Let's see. Okay, I guess that'll kind of work. So if we look at a screenshot of the editor, which I don't know why that's not loading. The picture shouldn't take that long to load. Maybe I can find another one before quicker than that loads. Well, there it is. So it's set up different, but you'll notice some things hopefully be familiar. Right down at the bottom there, like all our game engines, it's going to be customizable, but down at the bottom, there's a way to access the files, organize all the files for the project, and get right to your file explorer. Um, Over in the top right is a list of all the items, the objects we have in our scene, so we can interact with them. Over in the nothing's really selected here, but over on the right is that top one, the outline there. That's for like grouping things together, handle them. Really, that leads to more control in the GPUs. The big thing for that, but it groups things together. We haven't really seen anything like that in Godot, but it's for control over the more direct control over the GPU. And down at the bottom, if something was selected, we'd see an inspector panel here, as well as maybe a tab for working with all the signals and triggers built into the game engine. Right, those are all things we saw just in a different engine. They're set up very, very similar. We have similar things. There's going to be some labeling changes, but whenever you sit down in a new engine, the first thing you want to look for is trying to figure out how it's laid out compared to what you already know. Because we know we're going to have those certain aspects, ways to access the files, the node inspector, a list of all the objects in our scene. What's another one we can look at? Okay, might be images of JMIC. Focus up here. Where are these screenshots so small? So here's another engine, JMonkey. It's one that uses Java, um, which when we talk about VR stuff, remember for our Meta and Steam VR stuff, it's really just an Android app, and most Android stuff works best with Java. So this engine works really well for VR stuff. Uh, or if that happens to be your preferred language or something. But again, we have ways to access our files. All of the objects in the scene are down here. The inspector panel is kind of spread out along the bottom. And then tabs to switch back and forth between viewing our game and the viewport and the script. Things that should seem very, very similar. Okay, I'll put a question in there. But as you look through different ones, game engines, you're going to want to try to find what's similar first. Okay, so a question came up in the chat. Uh, Let me look at this real quick. So a question, let me think about that for just a minute, Justin. Uh, make sure I'm understanding your question correctly. Um, so a question about kicking a wall, sliding along it, but not letting the player jump over the wall. So really the best way to do it would be let physics take over, just move your character against the wall and make sure there's no upward forces. But that would involve changing your character from a character body to a rigid body, which would probably involve a whole lot of recoding what's already in the game. I think you can change. No, I can't change that temporarily. If I'm understanding your question correctly, right? You don't want the character to be able to keep bouncing against the wall. When they hit the wall, they're going to slide along it like this. But if they try to jump next to the wall, you don't want them to be able to like climb it like they're doing parkour or something. So it's going.
Correct.
So we need the actual laws of physics. One thing you could do is quickly swap your character object out for a rigid body so that the normal laws of physics apply. So like when you're jumping up against it, that code you had would get it moving in the right direction. And then they don't have any upward force. So like right before it hits the wall, you do a raycast or something and set a Boolean so that that movement's going on. And right before it hits the wall, you remove your character object and insert a rigid body that has the same graphics and animations and all of that. And then the rigid body hits the wall and only the regular laws of physics can apply. So then there's only gravity pulling down. And if they keep jumping against the wall, they're not going to be able to create an upward force. And then when the slide is done, switch back, swap those objects out again. That's my first thought. But let me think about it, and I'm gonna keep it rattling around in the back of my brain for a minute and see if I can come up with a better way to do it with the character body 2D. Yeah, there's always multiple ways. There might be a way to set up conditions so that you don't allow any Y movement if they're in contact with a wall or something. But let me let that roll around in my brain and see what I can come up with. Let's see. Change character body to rigid body. And get it. This is my first thought that would make it easiest. Oh, wait, what is this property? I've never used this property, but that sounds like it would probably work. For character body move physics. Well, I don't see the thing that this AI was suggesting. I don't see a move mode property. Try, try looking into that. You might be able to just temporarily change it to behave like a rigid body. And then they have the normal laws of physics. So just like us, we jump up against the wall, we can't climb a wall by repeatedly running into it like a bumblebee. Uh, I don't see what the AI is talking about here, so it might be making things up, but that property would probably help a long way with that. Or can actually check it in the game. Yeah, I was just kind of filling space talking about things. I didn't want to introduce a whole lot of stuff, right? Because really what y'all need is time to work on stuff. Um, I think I some numbers here. Go see if it's on the predictive text, if that's actually on the predictive text. So, and sometimes this can be really useful too. Um, since there's usually so much else going on in the game when you encounter questions like that, Justin, one thing that can be helpful is go create a version that only does the one thing you want it to do. And then hopefully you can very quickly uh, test those properties in an isolated environment and get it debugged in a smaller setting and then move it into the big one. And a static part 3D with tensions. So all this should look familiar here, right? Just setting up this little test environment. 3D and 7. Oops. Yeah, this doesn't seem to know what the move mode. I think the AI was lying to us with that suggestion. Live might work. Um, I'm gonna let that question rattle around in my brain for a minute, Justin, and see if I can come up with a a simpler solution for it. There should be something. But I think,
Okay.
yeah, you'll just need to switch it to the rigid, to behave like a rigid body, which is reapplying physics. According to the AI, there's a property that does it. I've never encountered that before, and I don't see it looking up. So I think the AI is lying about that. But my first thought is just remove it. Use the cue free thing to actually remove your character, and then add child to put in a rigid body that looks exactly like your character. And then when it's no longer in contact with the wall, do the opposite to switch back. A little bit of coding there, but it might be the most straightforward way. And yeah, I'll see what else is there. That was a good question. Anybody else have questions? Why don't we take about 5 minutes or so just to address questions? Any issues that you've encountered? Things you're not sure would work on? You got a few questions. Yeah, so really I guess that's probably that's what we need to do today is just address questions. I was just filling time. I was going to go for about an hour, 25 minutes is probably good too. Because in a project-based class like this, time to work on the project is the most important one. I know one group has already turned in their project. Do other groups want to meet with your group members if they're here today? I can go ahead and set up breakout rooms. And yeah, then that leaves us lots and lots of time to work on the projects. No need to insert new stuff. Thank y'all for making this class go so smoothly. Thank you for helping me track down all the typos and bad quiz questions in that IB Online shell I was creating. Usually when IB Online shells show up in a classroom, we take stuff out, but I really appreciate your all's help pointing out all the typos and bad quiz questions. So now whenever that releases on IB Online, people sitting at home working in an asynchronous format don't have to try to figure out what's meant when there's some strange typos or instructions that aren't very clear or anything. It's been a really good semester. I do teach more than this subject, so feel free to keep my contact information around. I'm always happy to help. Reach out if you have questions anytime. Otherwise, I think that'll kind of wrap up our lecture here. I'll open the breakout rooms in case you want to meet with your groups, but then that'll be it. Please use our time productively, right? This is almost a 3-hour long class, so we have basically 2.5 hours. I'm going to be sitting in my office ready to hop on a Zoom call. If there's any questions, remember Ivy Learn messages and text messages are 2 things that make noise on my phone. So that's the quickest way that you send an email. I'll be sitting at my desk watching the email, and I'm always happy to help. Even moving forward after the class ends, I guess the final note is remember the final deadline, which I'll be sending reminders about this through the weekend. 11:59 p.m. Sunday night. Everything shuts down and locks. So even if it's not finished, just make sure you get it, you submit it by then. Right? Don't wait till 11:58 and try to log in and submit it. It needs to be in the before then. So even if it's not finished, you'll get some partial credit on it, which is much better than no credit. And then first thing Monday morning, I'll finish the grading and submit grades. And I wake up early, usually around 4:30. So I'm typically done with grading by 7 o'clock in the morning, have the grades submitted and everything. So please keep an eye on that final deadline. And even if it's not finished, you'll still get some partial credit. So send me what you have at that before that final deadline. All right, so y'all have a great break. Try to relax and enjoy it. Still a couple days away, and use our time today productively. I will see you around. So let's see. Start this.